Before Oprah, before Beyoncé, before any woman had ever built a fortune with her own hands, there was one. She was the first self-made female millionaire in America. From a time when women, especially black women, had almost nothing. She wasn't born into wealth. She was born into poverty, into struggle, into a world that didn't see her as equal. But that world didn't know what was coming. This is the story of Madam C.J. Walker, a story of pain, persistence, brilliance, and legacy. A story of a woman who lost almost everything and still built an empire. Her real name was Sarah Breedlove. She was born in 1867, just 2 years after slavery ended. Her parents had spent their lives enslaved. They worked under the burning sun on Louisiana plantations. She was their first child born free, but freedom didn't mean safety, or comfort, or opportunity. Her childhood was cut short. By the age of 7, she had lost both her parents. Cholera swept through her community like a storm, with no one left to care for her. Sarah moved in with her sister and brother-in-law, but their home wasn't peaceful. It was harsh. She worked, cleaned, cooked, and survived, while other children played. Sarah learned to endure. By 10, she was working full-time. By 14, she was married, half out of love, half out of fear. It was the only escape she could find. At 17, she gave birth to her daughter, Lelia. At 20, she became a widow, alone, broke, and carrying a child, through a world that offered her nothing. She moved to St. Louis, Missouri, a city where her brothers worked as barbers. There, she found work as a washerwoman, 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. She scrubbed laundry for wealthy white families. Her hands were constantly blistered. Her knees stayed sore. She made little more than $1 a day, but she refused to give up. Evenings were spent reading the Bible, attending church, and educating her daughter. She didn't have a formal education, but she believed in learning. She believed in dignity, and she believed that someday, somehow, her life would change. Then something happened that terrified her. Her hair started falling out. First a few strands, then patches. For black women of that time, hair wasn't just about style. It was about self-worth, acceptance, identity. It was tied to respect, marriage, opportunity. Losing it meant losing more than beauty. It meant losing power. She tried every product on the market, but most were made for white women. The ingredients didn't help. Some made things worse. So she began experimenting, mixing oils, studying folk remedies, talking to other women in her community. She used hot combs, eggs, pomades, anything she could get her hands on. And slowly, she created a formula that worked. Her hair started growing back, shiny, strong, thick. Women began to ask her what she used, and then they asked if they could buy it. She had no business plan, no factory, no office, just belief. And from that belief, a business was born. She married a man named Charles Joseph Walker, a newspaper salesman, and took on a new name, Madam C.J. Walker. It sounded elegant, international, powerful, the kind of name that looked good on a bottle. In 1906, she officially launched her product, Madam Walker's Wonderful Hair Grower, and then she got to work. She traveled the country by train, going door to door, holding demonstrations, giving lectures. She visited churches, beauty salons, women's clubs. She taught not just hair care, but self-care. She spoke about discipline, dignity, and ambition. She didn't just sell products. She taught women how to use them. She told them to look in the mirror and see a future, one they could shape with their own hands. Business grew fast, but she knew she couldn't do it alone. So she started training other women, teaching them how to sell, how to speak confidently, how to earn. She gave them uniforms, sales kits, and pride. She called them Walker agents. These women became icons in their communities. They walked with their heads high, carrying purpose in every step. Some bought homes, some supported families, Some became community leaders. They weren't just workers, they were pioneers. By 1910, she moved operations to Indianapolis and built her own factory, not rented, not borrowed, hers. She opened a beauty school and a research lab. She created her own supply chain, run by black hands, led by a black woman, and she kept building. In 1916, she bought a mansion in New York, Villa Luero, designed by the first licensed black architect in the country. Her neighbors were the richest families in America, but hers was the only mansion that stood as a symbol of black wealth, black power, and black excellence. She gave generously to the NAACP, to black colleges, to churches and orphanages. She hosted the National Negro Business League at her estate. She funded legal campaigns against lynching. She created scholarships for girls like her, who had nothing but a dream. In her own words, "If I have accomplished anything in life, it is because I have been willing to work hard." By the time she passed away in 1919, at the age of 51, her company was valued at over $1 million. She had trained over 20,000 agents. Her products were being sold across the United States, the Caribbean, and Latin America. But her impact went far beyond money. She proved something powerful, that a woman born in a wooden cabin with no education could stand taller than the tallest skyscraper. That hair, something the world saw as vanity, could become a path to independence. That beauty could become revolution. Her daughter Lelia, later known as Alelia Walker, carried her legacy forward, becoming a central figure in the Harlem Renaissance. And Madame Walker's name, it lived on through brands, museums, schools, and the lives of every woman she inspired. She started with $1.25. She ended with a legacy that changed America. She proved that greatness isn't about where you start, it's about how far you're willing to go. That the truest luxury isn't what you wear, but who you become. She once said, "I got my start by giving myself a start." That's the spirit of Madame C.J. Walker, the spirit of rising from nothing, the spirit of lifting others as you climb, the spirit of building beauty in a world that tried to take hers away, just like she did. If you enjoyed this video, I highly recommend watching this next one. It's just as powerful.